In this video, I will show you how to perform CRUD operations using React.js. So I will show you how to create products, how to read products, how to edit products, and also how to delete products. So to create a new product, we can click on Create. And then we can fill this form. Let's click on Save. And here we can see that we have a new product. Now to update this product, we have just to click on Edit. Then let's change the price. And let's update the description. We can also update the name. Let's click on Save. So here we can see that the name and the price have been updated. We can also delete a product. So let's click on Delete. And here the product with the ID 5 has been deleted. So to create this application, we will use Bootstrap and also we will use React Router. So here if we click on Home, we are on the home page, and if we click on Products, we have the list of products. To create a new React application, it is necessary to install Node.js on your computer. So you have to go to the website of Node.js. Then we have to click on this link. And then we need to download and install Node.js, but in my case I have already installed it on my computer. Then let's create a new React application. So I want to create it inside this folder. So we need to open the command prompt from this folder. So here let's type cmd. And then here we have to type npx, create React app, then the name of the application that we want to create. So here let's create a new application called web app. Let's press enter. Of course, this operation can take some time depending on your internet connection speed, so we have to wait. Now the application has been created successfully after about 6 minutes, so we can close the command prompt. And here we have this new application. It is called web app. So first I want to delete Git because I don't like to use it. So let's open this folder and we can delete this hidden folder. So let's delete it. And like this application will not use Git. Now let's open this folder using Visual Studio Code. So we can just drag and drop it. So here, for the moment, we have several files in the source folder, and we don't need all of them, so we only need the index.js file. So let's select the other files. And let's delete them. Now we need to update the index.js file. So here we need the first line and the second line, but we don't need these lines, so let's delete them. Also, we don't need this statement, so let's delete it, and also let's delete the comments. So for the moment, we need the app component, but we already deleted the file that contains it. So we can create a simple function component called app inside this file. So just here, let's create it. And of course, it will return a React element. So for the moment, just let's display the text hello. Let's save this file and then let's open a command prompt. So we can click on terminal, then new terminal. And to run this application, we have to type the command npm start. Let's press enter. So we obtain this application. So it is running on the local machine on the port number 3000, and this is the hello message that I added to this application. Now I will show you how to add Bootstrap to our application. So here let's type Bootstrap. Let's go to the first link. Then let's go to docs. Then we need to add this link element and this script element. So let's copy the link element, which contains the URL of the Bootstrap CSS. And we need to add it to the head element of our HTML file, which is available in the public folder. So this is the index.html. Let's open it. And in the head element, just at the end of the head element, for example, after the title, we can paste the statement. Let's go back to the website of Bootstrap and let's copy the script element. And let's add it just after the link element. Now let's save this file and let's close it. Now let's create the navbar and the footer of our application. So we can create a new file, and inside this file we can create two components. So here let's create a new folder in the source folder. So just here let's create a new folder and let's call it, for example, pages. You can call it components if you want. Then in the pages folder, let's create a new JavaScript file. So let's call it layout.js. And first of all, we need to import React. So here let's type import React from React. Then let's create and export two components, the navbar and also the footer. So let's export it. It is a function component. The first function component, let's call it navbar. And of course, we need to return a React element. So here, to find the source code of the navbar, we have to go to the documentation website of Bootstrap. So here, let's find the navbar. So under components, we can find navbar just here. Then let's copy this source code that allows us to obtain this navbar. So we can copy it from here. And then we need to paste it in the return statement. So for the moment, we have several errors because we have some elements which are not closed. Anyway, we will delete some elements because we don't need all of them. But for the moment here, we have an A element with the name of the application. So here let's write web app, for example. Then in this list, we have some items. So we need only to keep two items. So here let's keep the home item and the link item. So we need these two items, and let's delete the other items. Also, we don't need this form, so let's delete it. Then let's change the name of the two items. So for this one, it is home, so we can keep it. For the href, it will be slash. And then for this item, let's call it products. And for the href, let's delete this character. Let's add slash products. Also, let's change this href. So here, let's delete this character and let's add slash. Then we need to replace the class attribute with class name because class is a reserved word in JavaScript. So we can select class equal. And to select all the repetitions simultaneously, we can click on Ctrl-Shift-L. Then let's write class name equal. Now let's create the footer component. So first let's hide the terminal. And after this component, we can create another function component. It is called footer. And we need to return the footer of our application. So here in the footer, we have the year and we have also the name of the application. Now we need to export the footer. So here let's add export. Now let's save this file and let's use the navbar and the footer in the index.js. So here in the index.js, we need to import the navbar and the footer. So here let's add import. And because we are using named export, then we have to use named import. So between brackets, we have to provide the name of the components, which are navbar and then footer. And we will import them from pages layout. So this is the layout file that contains the two components. Then we need to add them to the app component. So for the moment in the app we have just this message, this text, and because we want to add the navbar and the footer, we have to add a fragment to this return statement. So this is a fragment, and we have to move the h1 element inside the fragment. And before the h1 element we need to add the navbar, and after the h1 element we need to add the footer. Let's save this file and let's go to the browser. So here we can see that we have this navbar, we have this text, and also we have the footer. So we can improve a little bit the appearance of this navbar. So here in the nav we can delete this Bootstrap class, and let's add the following classes. So we have to add this for the color, this for the background color, this is for a bottom border, then we have a shadow, then padding, and also bottom margin. Also, instead of using a container fluid, we can just use container. Let's save the file. And this is much better. Now, instead of displaying an h1 element inside the page, we can create some components that will be used as our pages. So in the pages folder, let's create two additional components, a home and products. So let's make a right click and let's create a new file. So the first file, let's call it home.js. And let's create another file. Let's call it products.js. So in the home.js, let's import React. Then let's create and export a component called home. So here we have a Bootstrap container with an h2 element that contains the title of the page. Let's copy this code. Let's go to the products file and let's paste it. Let's change the name of the component. So here it is called products. Let's save this file. Also, let's save the home file. Let's go to index.js. And let's import the home and the products components. Then let's display them inside of this hello message. So let's delete it. Let's create the home component or the home element. And also let's create the products element. Let's save the file. So in the products component, let's change the title of the page. So instead of home page, let's call it products page. Let's save the file and let's go to the browser. So here we can see that we have the home page title and also the products page title because we are displaying the two components, the home component and the products component. So to be able to display only one component at a time, we need to add a React router. So let's go to the Visual Studio Code. Let's show the terminal. So this terminal is used to run our application. We need to open a new terminal. Here I will select command prompt. And to install React router, we have to type npm I for install, then React router DOM. Let's press enter. So now React router is installed correctly. Let's delete the home and the products components. And we need to put the navbar and the footer inside a browser router. So just here, let's create a browser router. So it has been imported, as we can see. And let's move the navbar and the footer inside the router. Then between the navbar and the footer, we need to create the different routes. So here we have to type routes. Also, it has been imported. Then inside the routes element, we need to create two routes. So this is the first route. It is for the root of our website. And if we go to the root of our website, we will display the home component. But if we go to /products, then we will display the products component. But here we did not import route. So here we have just to add comma, then route. Also, we need to update the navbar. So let's go to the layout file. And each time we have an A element, we have to replace it with a link element. So first let's import the link element. Then let's replace the A with link. Of course, we have to replace this closing tag with link as well. And the href should be replaced with 2. Let's do the same thing with this A element. And also with this A element. And to improve the appearance of the home item and the products item, we can delete active and let's write text dark. And also for the products item here, just here we have to add text dark. Let's save the file. Also we need to save index.js. Then let's go to the browser. So here we can click on products and this is products page. Then we can click on home and here we have the home page. So if we click on products, we can see here that we have /products. And also the page did not refresh. Now I will show you how to perform CRUD operations on the products. So we need to set up a server and a web API. The easiest solution is to install JSON Server, which is a REST server. It allows us to perform CRUD operations using the different HTTP methods. So here let's type JSON Server. We can also add GitHub to find it on GitHub. So we have to go to this first link, it is on GitHub. And then we can follow these steps. So to install the server, we have to use this command. So let's copy it. And in this terminal, we can paste it. Let's press enter. Then we need to create a JSON file that will contain our data. So we can create it anywhere, but in our case, I will create it inside this application. So let's create a new file. Let's call it db.json. So for the moment, it is available in the source folder, but I want to move it on the root of our application. Then let's open this file, so this is it, and then we need to create a JSON object. And inside this JSON object, we need to define our endpoint, or also called our service. So here the key will be the name of the service, and because we want to perform CRUD operations on products, the key here will be products. And the value will be an array of products. So for the moment, we have no products, but we can fill it with some products. So here let's create some products. So every product is a JSON object, so we have to create it between brackets. And then inside the brackets, we can define the different data of the object. So here every product should have a name, a brand, a category, a price, a description, created at, and of course an ID. We can also create more products. Now let's save this file, and now we need to start our JSON server. So let's go to the documentation website, and here to start the server we need to use this command. So this is the name of the JSON file, but this is not enough because our application, our React application, is already using the port number 3000. And if we use this command, then the server will start on the port number 3000. So we have to copy this command. Let's paste it here. Then let's add -- port and the new port number that we want to use. For example, let's use the port number 3004. Let's press enter. So now our server is running on this address. Let's copy it. Let's paste it just here. And of course we need to add the name of the service. So we have to add /products. Let's press enter. And here we can see that we have these two products. Now let's update the products component. So this component should be able either to display the list of products or to display a form that allows us either to create a new product or to update a product. So for this reason, we need to create two additional components. So just here, let's create two components. We will not export them, so we will use them inside this file. So they will be function components. The first component, let's call it product list. And it will be used to display the list of products. So it is called product list. So for the moment, let's display just the title of the page. We can display the title of the page inside a fragment. Then inside the product list component, let's create a new button that allows us to create a product. So here, let's create a button called create. Then let's copy this component and let's create a new component called product form. So this is called product form. And the title of the page will be create a new product. Also, we can change the name of this button and let's display the text cancel. Also, we can change the Bootstrap class. So here, let's say btn secondary. Now let's display the product list and the product form inside products. So here we can delete this text. Let's create product list. Then let's create the product form. Let's save the file. And here we can see that we have this list of products and create a new product. So we are displaying the two new components, but we need to display only one component at a time. So first we have to display the list of products, and when we click on create, we have to switch to the product form that allows us to create a new product. And if we click on cancel, then we have to display the list of products again. So to do this, we have to create a new state inside the products component, and the new state will be the content of the page. So here let's create a new state. So the variable, let's call it content. And the function that allows us to update the content, let's call it set content. And of course we have to use the hook useState. And here we can see that useState has been imported. Then we have to provide an initial value to the content. So here the initial value will be product list. So we can copy this And here we have to create an element using this component. And then instead of displaying the product list and the product form, we can just display the content. So let's delete both of them and let's add brackets, then content. Then let's create two functions that allow us to switch between the product list and the product form. So let's create a first function. Let's call it showList. And when we call this function, then we will display the product list. So here we can call the method setContent to change the value of content. And the new content here will be product list. Then let's create another function that allows us to display the product form. So here it is a function, and let's call it showForm. And when we call this function, we will update the value of content, and content becomes equal to product form. So here let's say set content, and the new value of content will be a product form element. So when we click on the create button of the product list, we want to display the form. So when we click on the create button of this list, we need to call the function showForm. So we have to provide the product list with this function. So we can provide it as a prop. So here let's create a new prop. Let's call it showForm. And the value of this property will be equal to the name of this function. Also, when we click on the cancel button of the product form, we have to call the function showList in order to display the list of products. So here we need to provide the product form with the name of this function. So we can do this as a prop. So here let's create a new prop called showList. And it will be equal to the name of this function, showList. Of course, we have to provide the showForm function to the initial value of our content. So just here we have to add the prop showForm. Now let's use the showForm function inside the product list. So here in the product list we have this button, and when we click on create, we have to call the function showForm. So we have to add the onClick handler, and you have to provide it with an arrow function. So when we click on the create button, then we have to call the function showForm that is available in the prop that should be provided to this function. So here we have to call props dot the name of the property, which is showForm. But we did not inject the props inside this function, so we have to do it just now, props. Then let's do the same thing with this component. So first let's inject the props. And when we click on the cancel button, we have to call the function showList. So here let's add the onClick handler. Then we need to provide it with an arrow function. And when we click on the cancel button, we will call the function showList. So here props dot showList. Let's save the file. Let's go to the browser. So here initially we have the list of products. If we click on create, now we have the product form. If we click on cancel, we have the list of products again. Now I will show you how to read the products from the server. So here in the product list, we need to create a new state called products, which contains the list of products that we have to obtain from the server. So it is a state. So here let's add const, then between brackets the name of the variable, which is products, and then the name of the function that allows us to update the list of products. Let's call it setProducts. Then let's initialize it with useState. So here between parentheses we have to provide the initial value of the list of products. And because this is a list of products, so it is an array. And we can provide it with an empty value. So we have just to add brackets. Then to read the data from the server, we can create a new function. So let's create a function and let's call it fetch products. So this function should send a request to the server to read the products from the server. So we can use either Fetch API or Axios. So Fetch API is supported by default by the different browser, and we don't need to install anything if we use Fetch API. So for this reason, I will choose Fetch API to make the requests. So to see how we can use Fetch API, we have just to go to their documentation website. Here let's type Fetch API. Let's go to this link, which is on developer.mozilla.org. Then let's click on using the Fetch API. So when we use this example, we will send a GET request to the server. So let's copy this example. Let's paste it just here. Let's change the URL. So we have to provide the URL of our JSON server, which is on localhost. Then the port number, which is 3004. Then here we have to provide the name of our service, which is products. So here, when we receive the response from the server, we will convert it into a JSON object. And when the data is already available as a JSON object, we will display it on the console. So this is what is happening for the moment. But here in our case, the response can be okay, but it can be an error. So we have just to modify this. So let's surround this statement and let's put it between brackets. Let's add a return. And before this statement, let's check if the result is okay or not. So if not response dot okay, this means that we have an error. In this case, we can throw an exception. So if we have an error, then we will throw this error and we will not execute this statement. Now let's catch the error. So just here, let's add catch. So catch receives an arrow function. So it is a function. So it receives the error. And we can do anything from this error. We can, for example, display it on the console. But if we don't have an error, then we will execute this statement. Then we will execute this statement. So this is not all what we want to do, because for the moment we are just displaying the data on the console. What we want to do is to update the value of this state. So here we can either delete this and use set products, or also we can put this statement between brackets like this. So this can be useful for debugging purpose. And then we can call the function set products to update the value of products. So here let's say set products. And we have to provide it with the new value of the products, which is data. So in my case, I don't need this statement, so I will just put it as a command. So when we create the product list, we need to call the function fetch products to read the data from the server. So just here, we can call the function fetch products. But we should not call this function like this, because each time we call this function, we will send a request to the server and then we will update the product list component. And each time we update the product list component, we will call this function. This means that we will have an infinite loop. So we should not call it like this. So let's put it as a command. Instead, we can use effect. So use effect allows us to perform an action only one time. So let's call use effect. Of course, we need to import it, but it has been already imported. So use effect requires as a first parameter the function that should be executed. So we can provide it with an arrow function. So the function that we want to execute is fetch products. Then use effect accepts a second parameter, which is the dependencies of this function. So the dependencies means that this function should be executed each time one of the dependencies are updated. But in our case, we don't have any dependency to this function. So here we have to provide an empty array. Like this function will be executed only one time when we create the product list component. Now, after this button, let's create a table. So we can use the Bootstrap class table to enhance the appearance of this table. Then let's create the table head. So in this table, we have 6 cells to display the data, and also we have another cell for 2 buttons, the edit button and the delete button. Now let's create the table body. And to fill the table body, we use the map function of the products list. So here let's add brackets. Then we can use the map function. So let's write products, which is our state, dot map. And then the map function requires a function. So here it will be an arrow function. So we have to provide it with 2 parameters, the product, which is one product from our array, and the second parameter will be the index of this product in the array. This will be useful to create the table row, so it will be called index. And this function will return a table row. So here let's add brackets, then return. And here inside the return statement, we can return a table row. So for the moment, let's create an empty table row. So this is a table row, and we can see that we have 6 empty cells, and then we have a cell with 2 buttons, the edit button and also the delete button. So here we have to fill this row. And first we have to provide every row with a key. So here let's add key. And its value will be this index. So between brackets we can write index. Like this, every row will have a unique ID. Then let's fill the different cells. So here we have to provide the product ID. So we have to add brackets, then product.id. So product here is this parameter. Then we have to do the same thing to display the product name. Then let's display the product brand. Then the category. Then the price. Let's add dollars. Then the date. It is called created at. So here we can see that we have a CSS style. So here we can see that the width is 10 pixels. This is much less than the required width. For this reason, this column will take the minimum required width. Also, we have this property which allows us to display the 2 buttons on the same line. But we cannot provide the CSS style like this. In fact, with React, the CSS style should be provided as an object. So we can cut this code. Let's delete the double quotes. Then let's add brackets. So inside the brackets, we can write any JavaScript statement. But inside the brackets, we need to provide an object. So we need to add another brackets. Then we have to paste the code. So width will be the property of the object, and this is the value. So the value will be displayed between double quotes. Then this is the second property, and the name of the property should respect the camel case convention. So here the second word will be with capital letter, and we have to delete the hyphen. And this is the value, so we have to display it between double quotes. Now let's save this file and let's go to the browser. So here we can see that we have this table with two products, which are the products that we have on the server. Now let's create another button that allows us to refresh this table. So we can copy this line. Here let's add outline. And the name of the button, let's call it refresh. And when we click on this button, we need to call the function fetch products. So here in this arrow function, we can delete this and let's write fetch products. Let's save the file. Let's go to the browser. So here, if we click on refresh, nothing happens because the data did not change on the server. So let's open db.json and we can change the price, for example. So here let's write 980. Let's save the file. So here when we click on a refresh, this value should change. Let's try. And here we have the new value. Now I will show you how to create a product. So we need to update the product form. And just after this button, we have to add a row. Then inside this row, we need to create a column. So this column will take the half of the width of the row on larger screens. Otherwise, it will take the full width of the row. And to display this column in the center of the page, we have to add the class mx-o2. Now inside this column, let's create our form. Then let's create the first field of this form. So in this row, we have a label with the text name. Then we have an input field, which is called name. And by default, this input field is empty. So here we have to use default value instead of value, because if we use value, then it will be read only. Now we can copy this row. Then let's create another row. Let's change the name. So here let's display brand. And let's call this input field brand. Let's create another row. So here let's call it category. And instead of this input element, we need to create the select element. So here let's write select. Let's change the class name, so it will be form select. Let's change its name, so it is called category. Then let's close it, so we can delete this slash and let's close it like this, select. Then inside the select element, we can create the different options. And here we have 6 options. So let's copy this row. And just after this div, we need to create another row for the price. So here let's write price. Let's rename this input field and let's call it price. Then we need to create another row for the description. So here let's write description. And instead of an input field, we need a text area. Also, we need to change its name. So here, let's call it description. Then let's create another row that contains the submit button. So in this row, we have two columns. This is the first column and this is the second column. In the first column, we have the submit button. It is called save and it is of type submit. And the second column is empty. So we can move the cancel button inside this column. So let's go up. Let's cut this button. And let's put it just here. Let's save the file and let's go to the browser. Let's click on create. And here we have this form. Let's click on cancel. And we are on the list of products. So now when we click on save, we need to read the data of this form, and if all the required fields are provided, then we can send a request to the server to create a new product. So in the form element, we have to add the onSubmit handler. And you have to provide it with an arrow function that receives the event. So the event allows us to read the data of the form. And when we submit the data of this form, then we have to execute a function. Let's call it handle submit. And let's provide it with the event that contains the form data. Now we need to implement this function. So let's copy its name and let's create it just here. So first we need to stop the browser from submitting the form to the server. So let's add event.prevent default. Then let's read the data of the form. So we can add a command, read form data. Then we need to convert the form data into an object. So here let's add convert form data to object. And when we convert the form data into an object, we will obtain our product. So product here is the data of the form. Then we can make a simple form validation to check if all the required fields are provided or not. So here let's add a command, form validation. So here we have to add an if condition. And we will check if we have the name or not. So here we have to add if not product.name. Then we can check the brand. Then we can check the category and the price. So if any of these required fields is missing, then we can display an error message on the console and we can exit the handle submit. Let's save the file. Let's go to the browser. Let's display the console. And let's click on save. So here we have this error message. Please provide all the required fields. So if all the required fields are available, then we can send the request to the server to create a new product. So here let's add a command, create a new product. So our product has a property called created@, which is the creation date. So here let's provide it. So we can use this statement to obtain the date. Now let's send a fetch request to the server. So this statement allows us to send a GET request to the server, but we need to send a POST request in order to create a new product. So here in the fetch function, we have to define a second parameter, which is an object. Then inside this object, we can define the method. So let's go to the documentation website of the fetch API. And here we have to define the method property. In our case, it is the post method. Then we need to define the headers. So the headers allows the server to know what is the type of the data that we will send to the server. Of course, we can delete this command. Then we can include the data. So here we can copy the body. And of course, we have to replace data with product. Then we need to check if we have a success message from the server or not. So let's wrap this between brackets. Let's add a return. And before this statement, let's check the response of the server. Then let's add the catch statement. So if the product has been added correctly on the server, then just here, instead of displaying the response on the console, we can show the list of products. So we can delete this statement and we can call props.showList. Let's save the file. Let's go to the browser. So let's take a look on the list of products, and for the moment we have 2 products. Now let's create a new product. Let's click on save, and here we have this new product. Let's go back to the create form. So if we click on save, we have the error message just on the console. Now I will show you how to display the error message in the user interface. So here in the product form, we need to create a new state. So let's call it error message. And the function that allows us to update the error message, let's call it setErrorMessage. Of course, we have to use useState, and the initial value of the error message will be an empty string. Like this, we don't have any error message by default. Then, if the validation fails, instead of displaying the error message on the console, we can display it inside this variable. So here let's add setErrorMessage. And the value that we will save inside the error message will be a Bootstrap alert. So here let's click on alerts. And we can copy the source code of this alert. Let's paste it just here. Let's change this attribute with class name. And let's change this value with our error message. So we can copy this error message. And let's display it just here. Now we need to display this variable inside the component. So we can display it just above the form. Just here, we can add brackets, and then we can paste the name of the variable. Let's save the file, back to the browser, and let's click on save. So here we can see that we have this warning. Let's create another product. Let's click on save. And here we have a new product. Now I will show you how to edit a product. So this is the edit button, and when we click on this button, we want to show the form. So let's add the onClick handler. Let's provide it with an arrow function. So when we click on the edit button, we need to call the function showForm that is available in the props. So here let's add props.showForm. And we need to provide this function with the product. But for the moment, the showForm function does not accept a product. So we need to update it. So this is showForm. Here we have to add product. And we need to send this product to the product form. So let's add a props. Let's call it product. and it will be equal to this variable. So the show form function is already used by the create button of the product list component. So we have to update it and to provide it with an empty product. So here in the product list, we have the create button. And here we can see that we are calling the function show form with no parameters. So here we have to provide it with an empty product. So we have just to add brackets. Now we need to update the product form component. So let's go to this component. And we need to fill the form using the product property. So this is our form. We have the name. So here in the default value attribute, we have to provide the name of the product. So let's delete the double quotes. Let's add brackets. Let's write props.product.name. Then let's copy this. Let's do the same thing with the brand. Let's delete the double quotes. Let's paste the value. Here let's write brand. Then let's do the same thing with the category. Let's write category. Then with the price, let's write price. Then let's fill the description field. So here let's write description. Also, we need to create another row to display the product ID. So let's copy this row. Let's paste it here. Then here let's write ID. And the value of this input field will be the product ID. But this input field will be of type read only. So here let's add read only. Then the class name will be form-control-plain text. Also, we should display this row if we have a valid ID. So we have to put this row between brackets like this. And then we have to add a condition just here. So if props.product.id is valid, then we can display the row. So let's write props.product.id. So this means that if the product ID is valid, then we will display this row. Otherwise, we will not display this row. Also, let's update the name of the page. So the name of the page depends on the value of the ID. If we have a valid product, then we can display edit product. Otherwise, we can display the text create a new product. So let's cut this text. Let's add brackets. Then let's check the ID of the product. So if props.product.id is true, then we will display the text edit product. Otherwise, we will display the text create a new product. Let's save the file. Let's go to the browser. Let's click on edit of the product with ID 3. And here we have the data of this product with the ID 3. So we can see that we cannot change the ID because it is of type read only. Now let's update the function handle submit. So in this function, we are creating just a new product. But it is possible that we want to update the product. So just here, let's add a condition. So if we have a valid product, then we will update it. Otherwise, we will create a new product. So let's add props.product.id. So if we have a product ID, then we will update the product. Otherwise, we will create a new product. So to update the product, we can either use the HTTP put method or the HTTP patch method. If we use the put method, then we need to provide all the properties of the product. But if we use the patch method, then we need only to provide the updated properties. So I prefer to use the patch method. So here we can just copy this statement. Let's add it just here. In the URL, we have to provide the ID of the product. So here let's add slash, then plus, then the product ID. And of course, we have to update the method, so it will be patch. Let's save the file. Let's go to the browser. Then here, let's change the price. Also, we can change the name. Let's click on save. And here we can see that the name of the product and the price have been updated. Now I will show you how to delete a product. So this is the delete button, and when we click on it, we need to call a method that allows us to delete a product. So let's add the onClick handler. Let's provide it with an arrow function. And the function that we want to execute does not exist for the moment. So let's suppose that we have a method called delete product. And it requires the ID of the product. So we can copy this code. Let's paste it just here. And now let's implement this method. We can implement it just here. So in this function, we need to send a request to the server to delete the product having this ID. Then we need to add the product ID in the URL. So just here, let's add slash, then plus, then ID. Also, we need to use the delete method in order to delete the product. So here we can define the second parameter of this method, which is an object. And then we can define the method, which is delete. And after deleting the product, we need to read the data from the server. So here we can delete this statement. And let's call the method fetch products. Let's save the file. Let's go to the browser. Then let's delete the product with the ID 2. So let's click on delete. And here we can see that the product with the ID 2 has been deleted.